Ever imagine a world where death isn't really the end. Like it's more of a doorway to, power. That's the world of the necromancer. And trust me, it gets way more complex than just summoning spooky spirits.
It really does. It's fascinating how this whole concept, this idea of manipulating life and death, it spans across cultures and time periods.
We're talking what? Ancient civilizations grappling with the same questions about mortality that, we still think about today.
Exactly. We're dealing with some heavy stuff today. We've got excerpts from Understanding the Necromancer, some really chilling historical accounts. Oh, and even a few fictional tales that really bring this whole taboo magic thing to life.
Get ready to, as they say, unearth the roots of necromancy. It's way older than you might think.
It really is. I mean, we're talking way before any dusty spell books you might be picturing. Take ancient Mesopotamia, for example. While they definitely had their rituals, necromancy was more about divination, using it as a way to seek guidance from the dead.
So like a mystical 1-900 number, but with way more risk involved.
Yeah. Exactly. Except instead of a crazy phone bill, messing up a summoning could mean some seriously bad spiritual consequences.
The Mesopotamians, they really believed that disturbing the dead, especially without the proper respect, it could, unleash some pretty nasty consequences.
Well, absolutely. It was not something to be taken lightly.
So not exactly the kind of thing you'd want to try at home then.
Definitely not on a whim, that's for sure.
But if some cultures were, terrified of the dead, how did others approach this whole practice? Take the ancient Greeks. They were exactly strangers to dabbling in the mystical.
That's right. And even in their literature, I mean, think about it. Even in classic stories like the Odyssey, you've got Odysseus consulting the dead prophet Tiresias for guidance.
Right.
It was a powerful tool, even for a hero like him, but definitely not without its ethical dilemmas. The ancient Greeks, they understood the power of it all, but also the potential dangers of messing with the dead.
So even back then, necromancy existed in this ethically gray area.
Definitely not black and white.
Not quite evil, but definitely not like a walk in the park either.
Exactly.
But what about ancient Egypt? They were practically pals with the afterlife, weren't they?
Well, in ancient Egypt, necromancy wasn't just accepted, it was practically woven into the fabric of their society. The Egyptians, they firmly believed that pharaohs retained their influence even after death. And the priests, well, they were tasked with maintaining that connection. They saw it as maintaining a balance between the living and the dead.
That's a huge contrast from fearing the dead. It's
Yeah.
more about respect and a continued relationship with those who've passed on.
Exactly. This acceptance, it really stemmed from a belief that the dead, when treated with respect, offered protection. It adds another layer of complexity to how we view necromancy, especially when you compare it to, well, its darker reputation in other cultures.
Which sort of begs the question, how did this practice, once so, intertwined with everyday life, become so taboo? What shifted?
Well, the thing is, the way people see necromancy, it's definitely changed over time, But one thing that's always been a big question is where these necromancers, where do they get their power from?
Right.
It's not as simple as you might think.
I have to admit, I kind of always pictured it as a one-size-fits-all kind of magic system. Everyone's drawing from the same spooky well of power.
Not at all. In fact, understanding the necromancer, it actually breaks down all these different sources of power.
Oh, wow.
And it really changes how people see necromancy, and more importantly, how dangerous it can be.
Okay, color me intrigued.
Right.
Let's talk Necromancy 101, Power Source Edition. What are we looking at here?
Okay, so first up, you've got your divinely powered necromancers.
Okay.
Imagine being like an instrument of the gods, right?
Wow.
You're tasked with guiding souls or righting cosmic wrongs, and you're using this power that's been bestowed upon you.
Talk about pressure. Hey boss, just checking the employee handbook here. Am I using my necromancer powers right?
Right. It really makes you think about those implications, answering to a higher power, especially when you're dealing with life and death.
Yeah.
But then you've got the classic image, right?
Okay.
The necromancers drawing on forbidden magic, dusty tomes, hidden rituals, defying the natural order.
Right.
But that kind of power, it rarely comes without a price.
Yeah, that whole forbidden knowledge thing never seems to end well in stories.
Yeah.
There's always that risk of corruption, of losing yourself to the power.
Exactly. And the thing is, the path of forbidden magic often leads to more dangerous territory.
Oh, boy.
But then what about those who are they're born with it?
Right.
The gift, or maybe the curse, of necromancy.
Those who are just hardwired to see and interact with the dead. That's got to be incredibly isolating. Is it a gift? Is it a burden? I mean, do you tell people at a dinner party, like, hey, want to see a cool trick with this chicken bone?
Right. Maybe not the best conversation starter, but it does make you think about what it means to have that kind of power just like ingrained within you. Yep.
And then there are the necromancers who get their power from objects.
Okay.
Cursed objects.
Right.
These artifacts that are just imbued with like the echoes of death, whispering promises of power,
Ooh.
but always at a cost.
Ooh, cursed artifacts. Those are always fun. Though I have a feeling it's not all, glowing amulets and convenient plot devices.
Right.
What kind of costs are we talking about here?
Well, that power could be linked to like a malevolent spirit.
Oh.
Or it carries a dark destiny for its user. There's no such thing as a free lunch in the world of necromancy.
Right.
Sometimes that price, it's a lot greater than anyone could imagine.
That's a chilling thought. Okay, so we've got divine power, we've got forbidden magic, innate abilities, cursed objects. What other flavors of necromantic power are out there?
Well, some necromancers, they make deals.
Okay.
With powerful entities,
Mm-hmm.
demons, spirits, you name it. It's like the ultimate shortcut, right?
Right.
To get that power. But those contracts, ooh, they always come with a hefty price.
It's often a piece of your soul, or even worse.
The classic deal with the devil trope. Always makes for a compelling story, but I think I'll stick with my my gym membership.
Probably a good call.
What about necromancers who, like, manipulate life force itself?
Yes.
That feels like wading into some seriously murky ethical waters.
It is. Imagine siphoning that life energy, feeding off of the living or even the recently departed. It's parasitic, this kind of power. It often warps the user, twisting them into something monstrous.
Yeah.
It really makes you question the cost of it all.
That's downright creepy.
Okay.
Okay, what else is there? This is quickly becoming the things that keep me up at night episode.
Well, there are those who draw power from death itself.
Okay.
Not as like a malevolent force, but as a fundamental energy in the universe.
Right.
Think of it like gravity, but way spookier.
Death as a force of nature.
Yeah.
That's both unsettling and strangely fascinating at the same time. It makes you think about, like, our place in the grand scheme of things.
It really does. And then you have blood magic.
Okay.
This is it's visceral, it's taboo, often involves sacrifice and rituals that are, well, let's just say they're not for the faint of heart.
Oh, boy.
It's almost always depicted as brutal, dangerous, and inherently corrupting.
Blood magic. Yeah, that definitely falls under the don't try this at home, kids category.
Sure.
It seems like there's a whole spectrum of necromantic abilities out there.
There is, with so many ways to tap into those powers of life and death. It's no wonder necromancers are both revered and feared.
Especially when you consider the types of undead they're known to control. And speaking of undead, let's move on to those creatures themselves. I think everyone has had nightmares about zombies at some point, but necromancy covers so much more than just, shuffling corpses, right?
Absolutely. Zombies, they're just the tip of the iceberg, really.
Okay.
The world of the undead, it's way more diverse and honestly way more unsettling than most people even realize.
Okay. I am so ready for a crash course in, like, Undead 101.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about the creatures that make necromancy both, like, fascinating and terrifying.
Right.
Where do we even begin?
Well, we might as well start with the classics, right?
Okay.
Zombies.
Zombies.
They're a horror staple for a reason,
Yeah. The shambling hordes, hungry for brains. Why are we so, I don't know, simultaneously repulsed and captivated by them?
I think it's because zombies, they tap into this primal fear of losing our humanity,
Right.
becoming just another, faceless monster in the crowd.
Right.
They represent this breakdown of society, this loss of individuality,
Yeah.
and this raw, instinctual drive that just overrides reason.
And let's be honest, that whole they just won't stay down thing.
Right.
It's the stuff of nightmares, but zombies are just one type of undead.
Right.
What other creatures are lurking in the shadows?
Well, you got skeletons,
Okay.
maybe less gruesome on the surface,
Right.
but still they're deeply unsettling.
Oh, yeah.
Just bones held together by magic and forced to serve some necromancer's will.
It really makes you think about our own fear of death, like how even just a skeleton moving can send chills down your spine.
It's true. It's like our own mortality just staring back at us.
We can't even escape the image of death, even when it's just bones.
Okay, what about ghosts? I mean, they're practically synonymous with haunted houses, spooky stories,
Oh, absolutely. And ghosts, they're fascinating because they tap into something different, I think.
Okay.
They're intangible, often driven by unfinished business, maybe some lingering emotions.
Right.
They represent those unresolved issues, the things we leave behind.
Right.
And that unsettling possibility that, some part of us might stick around after death.
It makes you wonder if everyone gets that, satisfying ending,
Right.
or if some are just left to wander. It's enough to make you want to, right all your wrongs and apologize for that questionable haircut you had back in high school.
Right.
Okay, what else is there? We've covered zombies, we've got skeletons, ghosts. It's like a macabre party at this point.
Don't forget about ghouls. Oh, right. Ghouls.
Those ravenous, monstrous creatures just driven by this insatiable hunger. They're the stuff of nightmares. Really, they are. The embodiment of all our fears about the darker side of, human nature, savagery, loss of control, complete descent into primal instinct.
Ghouls definitely fall under the avoid at all costs category.
Absolutely.
Anything else lurking in the shadows?
Well, we haven't even touched on wights.
Okay.
And that's where things get even more ethically complicated.
Okay.
Imagine a powerful warrior in life, right? Brought back with all their skills intact.
Okay.
But now they're bound to the necromancer's will.
So not just like mindless corpses,
Right.
but beings with their own experiences, maybe even regrets.
Yes.
Now forced to serve someone else's commands.
It's true.
That's some heavy stuff. And it makes that whole good versus evil line even blurrier when it comes to necromancy, doesn't it?
It really does. You're hitting on such a crucial point here. The idea of, enslaving the dead, denying them peace, forcing them to do our bidding.
Right.
It really does violate a lot of deeply held beliefs across cultures.
Yeah, for good reason.
But what if there's another side to this? What if necromancy isn't always about domination and control?
A good necromancer. Isn't that kind of an oxymoron?
Not necessarily. Even our book, Understanding the Necromancer, acknowledges that it's not always about, doom and gloom.
Yeah.
What if necromancy could be used for healing?
Okay.
Or for guidance, or for righting past wrongs? Imagine a necromancer who acts as a bridge between the living and the dead, offering comfort and closure instead of chaos.
So more like death whisperers than death metal enthusiasts.
Exactly. Imagine like a necromancer using their powers to mend wounds that regular medicine just can't touch, or helping lost souls find peace instead of binding them to their will. It challenges our assumptions about what a necromancer can be, That's a perspective you don't hear very often. It makes you realize that even like in the most taboo magic, it's still a double-edged sword. The intent behind the power, that's what really matters.
Absolutely. And those anxieties about crossing the line between life and death, those aren't confined to, ancient history books or fantasy worlds.
Right.
They're more relevant now than ever.
Hold on. Are we about to connect necromancy to robots and AI? Because I gotta say, that is not a connection I saw coming.
Think about it.
Okay.
The fear of robot uprisings, of artificial intelligence becoming too powerful and turning on us.
Right.
It's the same fear people had about necromancers losing control of the dead. It all comes back to that same anxiety about our creations becoming our undoing.
It's like the ultimate cautionary tale.
It really is.
Except we're living in a world where those stories are starting to feel more and more possible.
They are.
A little too possible.
And the ethical questions are so similar.
Right.
If a robot, if it actually achieves sentience, do we have the right to control it? To shut it down?
Right. It's the same question we have when we talk about the autonomy of the dead. Just because we can create something, does that automatically mean we get to control it?
So whether it's ancient necromancers summoning spirits or modern scientists writing algorithms, it all comes down to responsibility.
It does.
Intent.
Yes.
Respecting the power of what we create.
Yeah.
Because the consequences of getting it wrong,
Oh, they're huge. They
No.
could be catastrophic.
Absolutely. And that brings us to something for everyone listening to think about.
Okay.
Necromancy, in all its forms, it forces us to confront our taboos, right?
Right.
The things that we just instinctively say, nope, unacceptable.
Right.
But how often do we really examine those taboos? What makes you uncomfortable? And could it be more nuanced than it seems at first glance?
It's a good reminder that the world isn't black and white. And even the things we fear the most, they often have like layers of complexity beneath the surface.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if sometimes understanding those complexities, that's the key to moving forward.